Hello, everyone. So let's talk about higher levels of spiritual development. So I am by no means some kind of spiritual master or some kind of expert or adept. I would classify myself as somebody who realizes how much they don't know. So in general, on kind of like the base level, the first level of spiritual development, you might classify even people who are religious and atheists kind of on the same level. So it might just be a social thing. It might be something that you just kind of opt into when you're part of a culture, when you're part of a community, or you're kind of born into it. You It's a social function, and you believe the things, and you go to the functions, but you don't really have a deep interest in really committing yourself to a path. And you might have, for instance, if you're a Christian, you might have crosses everywhere. You might have been raised in Sunday school. You might go to church every Sunday, but it's, you kind of opt into it and you kind of agree with it, but it's not, the spiritual path and God is not something, or gods or spirits are not something that's on your mind a lot. It's just kind of something that you do. And that's kind of like the first level. And a lot of atheists also fall into this where, atheist person might, not have been raised religious, or were, and they didn't really vibe with it. But you're just kind of on the same level. Even if you're a Christian, you like Christian, or you're kind of born into religion, you might think about God, you might kind of opt into it, and then you're raised, you might kind of not. Like, you think about it a little bit, but all these beliefs and all of these functions are more societally and more kind of like, okay, I guess. Rather than actually having an interest, rather than actually going along a path, rather than having deeper questions about things, you kind of just are. I've met a whole lot of Christians who are just kind of are, or it's a societal thing, or it's kind of something they were raised with, so they agree with it, and they kind of are okay with it. But yeah, so I find like there's actually even higher level atheists who have a very philosophical understanding and identity that might even be higher than this, where they're asking the questions. They're asking the philosophical questions about life, about truth, and about the nature of things. And a lot of the time, these kinds of atheists, these philosophical atheists, might be on a higher level spiritually than a lot of people who are religious. And a lot of people who are, tie in religion and politics like very, very closely are also kind of on this first level, where it's once again, it's a very societal function kind of thing. The next level is when you're starting to actually learn more. You might really be interested, and you might have some questions that are on your mind quite often, and you might be interested in like supernatural shows or even ancient aliens on History Channel. And you're really starting to like contemplate these things, and this might fall into the same category as like strong philosophy, where you do think about it more than the average person, and you're starting to question kind of the societal, either culture or societal, religious or spiritual culture that you're raised in. You have these deeper questions about it. And then then you have your next level, where if you're a spiritual person or religious person, but you're really starting to see that everything's kind of a part of the same thing, that there's a lot of overlap between. This might also fall into slightly lower level of very philosophical atheist, or philosophical Christian, or monotheist, or polytheist even. But you're starting to see how things overlap, and how things are similar, and how human beings are similar, and you're starting to, you see that everything is kind of connected, and you're starting to see that old parable about, or that old metaphor about, all the blind men grasping an elephant, describing different parts of the elephant. And you're starting to see, okay, yeah, everybody's grasping the same thing, but in a different way. And, there's some overlap between these things, but, that when you're starting to kind of be Vedantic, and, basic level of Vedanta, not like higher levels of Vedanta. You're not Vivekananda level, but like basic levels of Vedanta. You're starting to see how everything is a part of the same thing, and it doesn't really make sense for like there to be, one religion correct, and that the multiverse is kind of layered. Like, for instance, I'm using Christianity a lot because I'm in the United States, in Texas, around a lot of Christians, and my parents are atheists. You're starting, you're starting to really see how maybe the teachings in another religion or another path are just as valid. It's just that they're seeing it through a different light. And then you kind of have That also might fall into occult as well, to stay on that section, where you're starting to really see like, okay, I can manifest things through magic, I can manifest things through prayer, and my prayer is very similar to other people's prayer. And in this section, you might also have, what seems like the opposite of Vedanta, where you're like, everything is relative, everything is within my power. I have the power to manifest whatever I so desire. And you might see religion as being something that tries to confound and confine your ability to manifest. You might go something like around Christians, you might be like a Satanist. And there's different levels of Satanists too. I'm not saying all Satanists are like this, but you might see like, okay, religion is binding us away. And you might find a lot of atheists on the base level, and also philosophical atheists a little bit higher, who also they might not believe in manifestation in regards to magic, or they might not see everything as one per se, but they see how religion confines and separates and divides people and basically defines them. But yeah, so you might be basic level Vedanta, seeing everything as one, seeing how everything works, or being very against this kind of control that keeps us from living the life that we want. That there's a lot of Vedantic slash you can say adversarial kind of paths that might be on two sides of there might be two different sides of a polarity, a duality, but they're still in that level where you're starting to see how things work, and either you see them all as working as one, or you see certain religion as confining, or a lot of stuff in between. It's not either polarity even on this level. That I feel like, and this is just, I have a bias because I'm talking about myself, I'm thinking about myself, but I feel like I'm just that level above that, which is you're really realizing how much you don't know. And while you still might, there's a lot of different beliefs on this level, but while you still might see everything as ultimately one, and you still might, or might be higher levels of seeing the diversity or the separation, confinement, but you're starting to realize how much you don't know. How much of the overlap is kind of doubtful. You're starting to see that a lot on this level that I think that I'm at, and I don't consider this a super high level. It's kind of like a medium kind of level. You're starting to realize how much you don't know. How much you don't know about the multiverse. How there are differences between things, even if everything is one, or even if religion is very confining. You're starting to, you realize how much Vedanta, and this it's a higher level of Vedanta, but it also kind of goes with the polarity thing. That's a little bit lower level. You see that while everything is very like confining in religion, or freeing spiritually, or freeing philosophically, you see that, I see that because I'm on this level, I think that there's a whole lot that we don't know. We don't know precisely how the multiverse works. We have some deep sensations and feelings about how it works, and we're starting to define, what we might consider as authorities. You're starting to be able to really hash out who has knowledge on this, and how the different universes work, how energy manifests, how energy composes our bodies and our being, how death works, how birth works, how consciousness works. And the more that you start to learn about all this, and a lot of people on this level start to meditate or are meditating. You meditate at lower levels too, but you start to realize that you know just enough, and you really feel strongly about how things work, or you feel you have a lot of deep suspicions, you could say, about how things work, but you really realize that you don't know all the intricacies. You don't know exactly how everything works. And you can call this kind of what usually we could call like the Socratic level, where I think Socrates was actually pretty high level, but I think Sadhguru, and I consider him as an authority for myself. I don't think that, he's like my pope or anything like that, but I feel like Sadhguru is somebody who actually knows. On lower levels, you might start getting attached to various magicians or occultists or spiritual people or Hare Krishna, and that's going to be divisive to some people, but you see on lower levels, you see all these different authorities, but you kind of take them all as having authority or knowledge on the matter. But on just above that, which is where I think I am, you kind of see how a lot of these authorities aren't really authorities. Just because you write a book, just because you say a lot of things, or you seemingly have deep philosophy or deep spiritual understanding, at this level you really see like, okay, this person obviously doesn't know what they're talking about, or this person does, or there's some people that have some knowledge but they don't have a well-rounded knowledge or that's applicable to everything. And that's always a qualifier for authority, in my opinion, on spiritual matters, or like knowledge on spiritual matters. If that person can tell you something that is useful in your practical life, and that is useful and tells you things that is useful in a number of different stages of spiritual development, or that is useful psychologically, especially because you'll have a lot of occultists or spiritual writers who seemingly know things, and people lower levels will be like, okay, they know something, but then at just a level above that, you're like, this person doesn't, this person does, and you're starting to see how their conception of the multiverse, of reality, of psychology makes sense, and they can give you practical advice. That's where I feel like I'm at. But on this level as well, is you have to know a whole lot to know how much you don't know. Like I see how much I don't know, and you have to really have thought about the universe, how energy works, how magic works, how spirituality works, how spiritual evolution works, how beings evolve spiritually, and perhaps how it's connected to evolution, how it's tied into evolution. But you start to see that, wow, there's a whole lot of gaps in my knowledge. There's a whole lot of little spaces in my knowledge that I don't have the insert for. It's almost like you have a lot of the puzzle built, but you see where the pieces of your puzzle is missing, where you haven't figured out what that piece is and how it fits in yet. And I feel like that a lot, because while I've worked out as far as understanding spirituality, as far as understanding metaphysics, as far as understanding the occult, I've learned a lot. But the more that you learn on this stage, the more that you realize, wow, these are the puzzle pieces I'm missing. Knowing how much you don't know is I honestly think the first step to actual higher levels. Compared to the average person, I might be on a higher level, like relatively speaking, a pretty higher level than the average person. But I realized, man, I don't know this, I don't know this, I don't know this. I'll give an example. Like, I don't know how mantra and meditation intricately work together. I can listen to other people and, consider them as an authority and say, I think that they're correct, but I actually don't know how closely mantra and meditation, how to use them in conjunction to produce a specific result or a specific advancement within myself, and how those two even techniques work together. Once again, this is just an example, but how they work together to actually figure out this precise science of it. I don't know the precise science of like how mantra and meditation work together. And once again, this is just an example, but I know that they're powerful individually. See, there's that puzzle piece missing. How do they directly connect? How do these spiritual sciences directly connect? And how can I use them to produce a specific result? I know the theories, I know what people say, but as far as actualizing it for myself and my own lived and realized knowledge, I don't know how they connect. You might not know how different ritual implements connect, how whether it be spiritual or occult, magic, or even religious implements, how they actually work in material existence, not just theoretical, not just philosophical, because a lot of this is philosophical, but actually function with reality, with material existence, with consciousness to produce an effect. It's that in-between point. And you might not know how these ritual implements work, how the shapes in a ritual that you might draw, a circle, a triangle, and a square, you might not know how they exactly work together and how they exactly correspond to the multiverse to produce a reliable effect. And there's a whole lot beneath, like, there's a whole lot of people who are very Vedantic, where they think everything is one, and they have a lot of specific knowledge about rituals and gods and things like that. but they still feel like it's all part of the same thing, and they don't know how to draw conclusions about authority for themselves. So anybody who says something flashy or who sounds intelligent might really seem intelligent to somebody kind of at a lower level. And I've seen that time and time again. And kind of at the level where I'm at, I've always really thought about the afterlife and different dimensions and things like that. But I'm starting to really look at the intricacy of consciousness, how it relates to daily life, how it functions in daily life, how the mind functions in daily life, and how that might pass into another dimension upon death, or during astral projection, or astral travel, or dreams. I have a lot of curiosity in these areas, but the actual specific functions of how these things relate to produce an effect, I can read books that say, but I have not completely realized that for myself. So once again, specific knowledge about how things relate, rather than just seeing it as, lower levels of Vedanta, or I call it Vedanta, but you think about oneness, everything, and part of the same thing, where you don't realize like the specifics. You have not fully realized the specifics or how they function to produce a certain effect, a certain result. I look at people, I'm going to use Sadhguru again as an authority. I also think Paramahansa Yogananda. I'm very Hindu and Eastern oriented. You can call me an Indophile, for instance. I think India is really the birthplace of all. I feel like it's most the birthplace of spiritual knowledge and really deep spiritual understanding. But I see people like Sadhguru, for instance, Paramahansa Yogananda, or Vivekananda, or even Alan Watts. That's more philosophical and spiritual than Eastern, but Alan Watts really delves into it. But I see these people and I recognize them as authorities, and I grasp how much they know compared to how much I know. And I see that they have the in-between pieces, or at least they understand them, they realize them. Maybe I haven't completely understood them myself, but they see how these little pieces in between work, and they tell us. Sadhguru is a wonderful example of somebody who gives you practical advice on everything because of his higher spiritual understanding. And you don't have to accept him as your authority. You don't have to think that I know what I'm talking about in reference to Sadhguru, but just understand that I see him being able to give advice on everything because he's reached a higher level to where he just has innate knowledge. So Paramahansa Yogananda, Kriyananda often said like he didn't ever see Paramahansa Yogananda pick up and read a book, but he knew all this stuff that you might learn in books. It's like he had realized how everything works. Paramahansa Yogananda, he realized because he had reached a level of samadhi where he could, go into that state where you're connected to everything, and where he had reached a certain level of enlightenment, he just knew how things worked and how they were. And he would just have random talents. Like Paramahansa Yogananda, somebody painted a portrait of him. And Paramahansa Yogananda didn't really like it. And then the artist is like, see if you can paint something better. And Paramahansa Yogananda's like, okay, I will. And then in about a week, he painted something that was much better, even though he'd never painted before. See, higher level of spiritual knowledge gives you access to all these avenues of life, manifestation, and just understanding of spirit, of soul, and even creativity and intuition. Higher levels that really open up all these avenues of knowledge, all these avenues of experience, and all these avenues of being able to be useful to everybody else. Somebody who is at a higher level should either be very useful or they might be very distant and they might not really want to deal with people. There's all kinds of stories of sages. There's this one that my late friend Josh really liked, where the story of this sage who, people would come to him often and ask him questions. So eventually one day he just decided that he was tired of answering questions. Every time somebody would come near him, he would throw pebbles at them. He would meditate beside a lake a lot. So he'd throw pebbles at them going, blah, 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 to kind of, just get them away. And they consider him a madman after a time, just so he could be left alone. But was that person compassionate at the same time? And yes, I feel like compassion. So there's two sides to this. One, I feel like either at this level, at higher levels of spiritual realization and understanding, either you're very compassionate, even if and he still falls into this sage, he is very compassionate because he was still manifesting peace and spiritual evolution around him just through his energy. He was sending his energy out, even though he wasn't directly talking to people, to actually aid the environment, aid the spiritual upliftment of people, and literally the natural environment. There's another darker side to somebody this is completely different, but on the same level that's higher than me, where I see that there's a lot of not all occult is dark, or I don't really understand things as dark in that way, but you've reached a certain level and you're using it completely to make things work for yourself and you're self-interested. So there's still people at a higher level than me, even much higher level than me, who aren't compassionate, who do not like the idea of oneness or karma or dharma or being a part of everything else. Don't like that idea, don't think that way, but have enough knowledge, patience, and persistence to actually be able to do things for self-enjoyment or self-grandization to make things really happen and have power over other people. A lot of the religious demagogues that we see that are talking in churches that make people believe this or that about God, they might have charisma, but they're still on the social level, way down there at the first level of it just being a social thing. That kind of charisma, they might just have a natural charismatic talent. They might not actually understand more. And I find a lot of these demagogues are down there at the bottom. Now, there are some really dark people that manipulate people who have these powers and this understanding, but they do not consider themselves, or they do not care for considering themselves as a part of everything else. So there are different levels of spiritual development, spiritual realization, and I see people that I've concluded have authority in matters because they can give practical advice and have understanding that makes sense. I'm at the level to where I realize how much I don't know and who has more puzzle pieces. And I'm starting to realize how big the puzzle is and how many I'm missing. And I think and this is just, once again, this is just me talking about the different levels and where I think I'm at. I realize, man, there's a whole lot of the puzzle I'm missing. The puzzle's way bigger than I thought. And what I think is my mind is connected, my spirit is connected. I see how it is, and I see how my soul is connected to my consciousness and how my soul is connected to everything around it. I see that it is, and I see how much of the puzzle that I have missing. So I think that if I was going to give you a piece of advice on all of this, is that figure out people who know what they're talking about, who can give advice on everything. Maybe if they don't give you advice directly, they can give advice on everything, and it makes sense. It makes sense in a grander scheme of things, but it also makes sense and it's practical and it works. That's a good way to figure out who you should consider as having spiritual authority, even if you don't have contact with them directly, and learn from what they say and learn from what they teach and practice it, see if it works. If it does, then great. There's a whole lot of the occult, magical, and spiritual community that benefits off the sugar pill or placebo effect, where they'll convince themselves that something works. So either it does, it's 50-50, either it does because they've convinced themselves and now they have drive, or it doesn't work at all and they're still convincing themselves that it has worked, but they're like looking at think that they're clever, or think that it's satisfying to look at it in a different way and be like, yeah, this really has worked in this way, but did you really get the effect that you're looking for? That's the litmus test. You have to figure out, did it actually work, or am I just telling myself that it did? So figure out who has knowledge and practice it, or try to learn from it and learn your own ways. You can be creative. You can use your ingenuity. You can use your natural soul's, influence over your mind to see like, oh, okay, this is the way I'm unique. I can go this way, or I can combine all these different things and be this. Use your natural intuition, and don't force yourself to trick yourself into thinking something's working when it's actually not. If you trick yourself hard enough, it'll work anyway, but you got to convince yourself a bunch. Understand that it's a process. Not everything works. See what works, see what doesn't. Try to figure out who has knowledge and who doesn't, and then that'll help you. That's honestly where I'm at, and kind of what I've learned up to that point. I mean, I could talk about a number of different things, but that's where I feel like I'm at. And over time, I've started to get little pieces of, I wouldn't say that I am a spiritual authority, but I'm starting to realize enough, or I started to realize enough at some point where I'm like, I actually know when I'm talking about this, this, and this, and this. And I'm always honest about it when I don't know, or when I say it, I'm honest about guessing. But I'm starting to be in tune with I have started a while back, to really be in tune with my intuition and my personal intuition, creativity and insight, to where I actually am creatively coming up with spiritual knowledge and spiritual understanding and wisdom on my own that I can share. And I hope that you've found that in my channel. I hope that has helped you. I hope that you feel like I do have some wisdom that I've developed. But once again, still at a very intermediate stage where I realize how much I don't know. At any rate, I hope this has been interesting. If you like this video at all, hit a thumbs up down there, like this video, and that always helps the channel. Feel free to leave a comment, leaving questions, concerns, disagreements, agreements, and I'll get back to you. As long as it's polite, vast majority of the time I get back to you. And feel free to follow me on Patreon at patreon.com/darkrealist, capital D, capital R. Once again, patreon.com/darkrealist, capital D, capital R. If you give me as little as $1 a month, then you get access to stuff that I share only on there, all my YouTube videos, of course, and my podcast. And once again, I put stuff there that I share only there. It's not a lot, but that I share only there for people who are patrons who give me at least $1 a month. If you give me more, that's great. If you want to contact me on Facebook, feel free to go to facebook.com/hunter.salazar, HUNTER.SALAZAR. You're more than welcome to contact me, message me on Facebook Messenger, and friend me and get into contact with me if you want any tips, guidelines, or you have more questions, or you just want to be friends. Honestly, you just want to talk to me. You're more than welcome to contact me there. At any rate, I hope this has been interesting, helpful, and insightful. And most of all, thank you very much for watching.